mama think about you being all inked up like that?
Well, my mom said, go to college, get a bachelor's degree, and you can get tattoos. I finished my bachelor's degree at 20 years old. I gave her my diploma, my degree, and I never seen it again. I haven't seen it in 9 years. Yeah, so she's a pastor
What's
too,
your,
so she's like super.
What's your master's in?
No, I have a bachelor's degree in philosophy. I thought I wanted to go to law school or business school. And I saw a philosophy student scored high on the GMAT and the LSAT, and I was just like, I saw philosophy in that category. I'm like, that's amazing. So I started studying philosophy, but in the middle of studying philosophy, I started asking myself what I really wanted to do with life. And I had a YouTube account, and my YouTube numbers were going through the ceiling, and then my college bills were going through the ceiling. So it was kind of hard to ignore. And I had something right in front of me that was making me feel alive, made me feel productive. And you know, I'd walk on campus and people like, oh, I seen your YouTube video. I'm just like, that's awesome, I just woke up. That was pretty cool. So it was hard to ignore. So studying philosophy, you know, at the beginning I thought maybe I was wasting my time, you know, because I fell in love with film, but then I realized I love asking questions. I'm here now because of philosophy, maybe because I cracked that part of me open enough to embrace it. I love asking questions, and that's why we're here. This is actually my first time moderating a panel. You know, I've done hundreds of interviews, but I've never done any of them live and in front of people in this kind of format. So it's just really exciting to me, and especially you, because I looked into, I started researching your story, and I'm just like, man, there's so much about your story that I relate to.
We all go through the same things, you know, eventually. We're all going to lose somebody we love, eventually. And it's just how you deal with that, you know. Some people collapse and some people push back. I don't know why, you know. I have a brother who just, you know, he went through the same things I did, but he collapsed, you know. He's the same person, he's 50, 54, I think. He's the same person he was when he was 15. You know, just didn't want anything more for himself.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest reasons. Like, my uncle passed away, and he was 39 years old. He was so full of art, full of talent, but he didn't believe in himself enough to say he was an artist. He can draw the Hulk with his eyes closed, but he'd never be like, hey, I'm an artist, look at my work. We have to push it out of him, and so he died with a passion and that was so dormant, or a talent that was so dormant in his being, his soul, that I've forever.
That can be soul crushing too if you don't follow your passion. You know? And art, anything creative, you have to have a passion for it too, because the obstacles are just almost insurmountable. You know? If you're going to try and make a living at it, you know, it's really difficult, and you have to believe in yourself. So.
That's a big part of it. I tell people that confidence.
Well, and people, the problem with artists and writers is they don't allow themselves to fail. You know, it's like they think if they did a bad drawing that they're not no good. They're not an artist. You know, and it's like we only learn from failure. You know, somebody famous once said, every artist has 1,000 bad drawings in them, and they're all at the beginning. You know, you just need to get through those. So, you know, I mean, you know, I've been doing this for a living for 30 years, and I still learn something every day. You know, but I continually challenge myself too. I don't want to get stagnant or worse, bore myself by being repetitive. So I try to keep it challenging and exciting, and I, you know, I mean, I was in the military for 8 years, so I learned discipline, and that's another thing. It's like you know, there's nothing fucking magic about it. You know, it's a craft like anything. It's like no one would wake up expecting to know how to play the piano one day, but for some reason people think you wake up and you're an artist one day, and that's not how it works. You know, you have to get up and practice it every single day. And, you know, and after a couple of years, you're going to get good at it. No matter what it is, if you practice it every single day, you're going to get good at it. And so I get up at 7 every day. By 8:30, I'm at the drawing board, even if I don't want to be, it's like, because that's, it's my job, and, it's like, fuck, I'm not digging ditches, it's not that difficult, I've dug ditches, and I know for a fact it's not that difficult, and, within, and there, many times, there's much more things I could be watching Asian porn, or playing with the cat, but it's like that's my job, is to go to the drawing board and create something. And within like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, I start having fun, So, it's, and I have friends who say, it's, you got it made because you don't have a boss, my friends who have real jobs, they're like, you have it made, you don't have a boss, you get to keep your own hours, and, I'm like, actually, it's 100 times more difficult. I mean, I've had real jobs all the way up until I was in my 30s, because they can go in and go, like, I don't feel like doing shit today. I'm just going to do exactly what I have to do and nothing more. It's like, well, I can't do that, It's just like every time I sit down, I have to bring my A game, because no one's going to look at something I did 6 months from now and go, oh, he must have been having a bad day, And when I do something, it stays in print forever. So it's just like every time I sit down, I have to bring my A game. I have to keep it interesting and exciting, every single time, because it shows in the artwork if you're bored with something. So
I'm glad that's you and not me.
yeah. This thing just fucking updated on me because I had to shut off on the airplane, and when I turned it back on, it like updated it, and now it's making all kinds of noises and beeps and.
I mean, at least somebody's getting service in there.
Yeah, modern technology. So he hit you from the philosophy standpoint. I kind of want to go with the artistic side. From brain to paper, we all envision things that we'd like to see on. I used to draw when I was younger. We all envision stuff that we'd like to see. How much of it translates in the way that you initially envisioned?
Well, I mean, it was a learning process too. I mean, when I did the book, like 27, 28 years ago, there were things I wanted. I had, scenes that I had in my head, but I just didn't have the skills to do them. I had this really cool scene where it's like it starts off as like a shot of the pavement, and then a guy falls on the pavement, and then the blood is like pouring out of his head in this big pool, and it's real kind of obscure. You don't know exactly what's happening at the beginning, but as the blood pools out, you can see that there's a fight going on in the reflection, and it's like, and I drew, because I thought, well, that's really cool to have the whole fight reflected in the blood, and I drew like 4 pages of that, and every time I showed the pages to somebody, they would turn it upside down. So, because everything was flipped,
Inverted,
yeah. And so it's just like, well, obviously it's not working if their first impulse is to turn it around.
Right.
And so I had to just pull that whole thing. But now I think I know I could do it. I could figure out a way to make it work now. So it's a learning process, and I've got to the point now where if I can think of it, I can draw. Yeah, I know what I'm doing now, so I'm pretty confident.
Yeah, I mean, I tell people, I'm a full-time creative, and it's taken me, I've had over 30 jobs. I've either quit or got fired from all of them. And I love what I do with my life. I love time, and I think the most responsible thing that I do is write my ideas down. I left college 9 years ago, and I still have a backpack, and I still have a notebook.
I always
still
have a
write
journal
every
with me,
day.
yeah.
Because I tell people the most irresponsible thing you can do is leave it in your head.
Because you'll forget it,
and then
a lot of great
I know
ideas.
your sketchbook is really important to you.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned in an interview once that the line I never forgot. You said that every line has a purpose.
Yeah.
And that made a lot of sense to me. Because every single line I put here, some ideas are in its infant stages.
Right.
I photographed 35 or 50 states, which is going to segue into our next question. I photographed 35 or 50 states. and I've been doing it for the last 5 years. And these were ideas I had in 4th grade.
Well, why is one red and one black?
Oh, this is a route I went. So I
Okay.
went down this way from California and back. And I stopped through Detroit for the first time in my life.
Yeah.
And out of all the places
It's
in the
heartbreaking,
States,
isn't
it broke my heart. I put my camera down for like half the day, and I had to absorb it because I saw, I'm gonna tell you how I experienced it. I pulled in, it was between like 8 Mile and the pawn shop neighborhood.
Yeah.
So I was in that side of town, and
That's right where I lived.
It
Actually, that pawn shop was like a mile from my house.
oh yeah, that neighborhood was really tough. Like, it was really rough. Like, I saw burnt down houses, and I was just like, man, there's like so many burnt down houses. And I was like, man, this neighborhood is in ruins. And I parked. I'm gonna take pictures. I started photographing this house that was like 75% burnt.
Yeah, they're beautiful, beautiful houses built in like the early 1900s by Henry Ford for his workers. You know, these enormous kind of Elizabethan houses, and you know they've just been gutted and burnt down and abandoned, you know, and stripped. You know, all the copper.
It was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking. I saw a family come up getting ready for school. So the house was burnt down, and then I took my picture, I put my camera down, and the kid comes out and they get in the car for school. I'm just like, I thought the house was abandoned.
Yeah.
Like, there are people living in that house. And then right next to it is a Subway, and then a Domino's, and then a burnt down house, and then a bodega, and then I'm like, yo, this is, it broke my heart. Like, I didn't think that there were cities that are living that way right now.
The
At least
burning
in
of the
States.
houses, originally, it was like this altruistic thing. It wasn't mean-spirited. I mean, a house would be abandoned in Detroit, and this is like the 80s, you know, and the neighbors would get together and decide, well, the city's not gonna tear it down or board it up. So we need to do something about it to keep it from becoming a drug house or a house where a kid gets molested in it. So the neighborhood would get together, and for some reason they picked the night before Halloween. I don't exactly know why, but they would burn it down just to keep their neighborhood safe, you know. And that eventually became what they called Devil's Night.
Devil's Night, yeah.
You know, and honestly, I lived there for 35 years, and I thought every city did that, you know.
Not that I'm aware of.
Until I was like, because it was like, it did become like an event, you know, the night before Halloween, you go out and watch the city burn, you know. And I was standing on top of a skyscraper, just so I could, you know, get a really good view, and I look over and there's a Japanese news crew there. And I'm thinking, why in the fuck are they here? Why don't they go to Cleveland and watch that burn, or Pittsburgh, you know? And then a friend of mine says, well, this is the only place they do that. And I'm like, really?
I mean,
But unfortunately, it's like a fire is uncontrollable, so it would catch the house next door on fire. And yeah, there were instances where whole neighborhoods were burned down. So, but it wasn't for insurance money, or it wasn't any kind of.
there was a lot of
scam.
that in Boston. I think in the in the 80s.
Yeah.
They were burning down houses left and right in Dudley and Dorchester, and my grandfather had stories for days about it. But they got through it. The neighborhood got rebuilt. I mean, they got through it enough now that the neighborhood is gentrified. Like, so it's I don't know how fast we got way past the burnt houses.
Well, unfortunately, Detroit was a city built on one single industry, making cars, and they all left. It's hard to say that the unions essentially destroyed Detroit, because they weren't ready to compete in a world market, and it's just like things could be made cheaper elsewhere. And they refused to take pay cuts, and one by one, Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler all left. And they gave them all opportunity. You guys need to take a pay cut, or we're going to have to leave, you know. And they refused across the board. And so literally there was nothing for that city to fall back on, you know. And it wasn't just the auto companies and the auto workers. It was like all little ancillary companies that made vent windows and moldings and mirrors and glass. So it was like this huge domino effect. You know, and then it was the support system, like the grocery stores and the restaurants and things like that, and it was just catastrophic, you know. That's the only thing they did in Detroit was make cars, you know, and it had repercussions in other states. You know, Akron made the tires, Pittsburgh made the steel for the cars. So, you know, it was like this big spider web of unemployment that just spread out. You know, and the sad thing is that, you know, it's Detroit. You know, it's still known as like Murder City, even though it hasn't been that for, you know, because no one lives there anymore. That no one's going to come and invest in Detroit because it's still Detroit, you know. So you know, it's heartbreaking. I moved like, I think 7 or 8 years ago, just because I couldn't. There was just nothing left. There, you know, the school I went to, the mall I used to go. There was just literally nothing to do there anymore. Nowhere to go. You know, it used to be Detroit. You know, Detroit was the rock city. Well, bands don't even go to Detroit anymore because there's no money there. There's no money. There's no place to play. So you know, it was heartbreaking. It was, you know, it was like watching someone you love die of cancer an inch at a time, and it's like it was just time for me to go. So I live in Dallas now, which is like the polar opposite of Detroit. You know, just
Cowboys doing good.
Every time a skyscraper gets burned down in Detroit, it pops up in Dallas. You know, it's a growing city.
I want to ask you about wrestling. I want to ask you about Sting. I probably asked this question a lot of times. I want to ask you about Sting. So, what's your thoughts about the wrestling character Sting?
Well, I mean, honestly, I've never watched wrestling, so I just, you know, it's like video games. It's just not for me. There's other things. I'd rather be reading or drawing and so I would be sitting at a convention drawing, and like these 13-year-old boys would walk up and say, "Is that Sting?" And I'm thinking like Sting from the Police, you know. I'm like, no, it's not fucking Sting. He's blonde, you know. And then I gradually became aware of it, and you know, the thing, it's like, you know, I didn't care. It's like everybody knew where it came from, you know. So to me, it was just flattering, you know. But the deal is I own the character and the publication rights, and the film studio owns the film and TV rights. So it would be up to them to bring a lawsuit and at first I think they just thought of it as like free publicity till they got a new film out. But then he started making figures and, you know, T-shirts and toys and merchandise, and so that was when they stepped in and said, "You're going to have to change that." So I guess he changed the makeup. And I've met him. You know, I've met him actually not that long ago. I met him, and he's trying to.
First time not that long ago?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
And and I'm like, you know, I mean, I was joking around. I'm like, "You owe me money, don't you, bro?" And then he tried to tell me he got it from Marilyn Manson. I'm like, "Who are you kidding?"
No way.
And Marilyn Manson wasn't even around back then.
I recognized both because I was like, the movie made an impact on me. And when I seen Sting in wrestling, I was like, it looks like the movie, but it's not. But then it really gave wrestling this dark element. So it was kind of fun to see.
Yeah, I had no
something
issues
similar
with it. I mean, it's like everyone knew where it came from, so it wasn't like I felt cheated or ripped off. You know? It was just flattering to me.
I had to get that off my chest. I want to ask you about Sting so bad.
You know, I mean, he could have just fessed up to it. He didn't have, "Oh, Marilyn Manson." No.
No way. Definitely Erick Draven. Anyone else got something they want to get off their chest? Don't be shy. You in the maid shirt? Come on.
Well, I'm just wondering, have you felt that with the change of technology and a lot of like people focusing on computer art and using tablets for drawing, do you think that's kind of changed? You know,
Well, yeah, it's definitely changed the industry. It hasn't changed me because I don't do anything digitally at all. In fact, I just got my first computer not that long ago. I would go to the library to check my email, so I would be limited to 1 hour a day, you know.
Wow.
But then I was writing a script for a guy in France, and it was like, well, I need to have a laptop to send him this, so So yeah, about 2 years ago, I got my first one.
Wow.
But I still don't, it's just a laptop. It's for email and, cat memes and whatnot, so.
All right, man. Cherry pop. Who else is next? Come on, don't be shy. Yes.
Well, I know that you quoted a lot of literature and famous poets in the book of The Crow. Do you have a background in literature, or is those just
No,
quotes that
I
you
went-
have heard at some point and liked?
No, I went in the military right out of high school. Because I had my choice. You go work on the assembly line, or you join the military. And it's like, well, I don't want to be like all those drunk, unhappy people that I know that work on the assembly line at Forge, So I joined the Marines, just basically to get out of Detroit for a while. But no, well, I got stationed in Berlin, in Germany, and German is the fucking ugliest language on the planet, so I learned French while I was there. I learned how to read it, I still can't. They laugh at me when I try and speak it, because they have all those vowels you don't pronounce. Half the word is silent. What the yeah, and I just started reading all these French poets, Baudelaire, and yeah, I mean, it was just, it was really, and that was kind of my awakening to philosophy, and was those. I mean, they're very nihilistic, poets. They saw, which I think I quoted one, an absolute, a true beauty and absolute ugliness. So, but yeah, I love to read, and I'm insatiable. I'll read anything. I have a great mailman who, every time somebody moves, he just gives me, and they don't leave a forwarding, he gives me all their magazines. So I just, I'll read everything except for Golf Digest. So,
That's a good question. Anyway,
Venom.
Venom.
How are you doing? Did you have any creative control or input to the Crow film? And what are your thoughts about that film? One great lead.
Oh, yeah, I worked on the Brandon Lee film pretty much from beginning till end. And I had a lot of freedom on that for some, well, I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of reasons. The main one being that it's only a $10 million movie. There's less than 4 seconds of CGI in it. Everything is like models and little miniatures. So it's like they didn't have a big investment in that. So essentially, they just told me and the director and Brandon, just go make your movie. They weren't too worried about it. So, yeah, I worked with the director and the screenwriter and Brandon pretty much through the whole thing. Which kind of leads to the big pink elephant in the room, the new movie. And I mean, no one's more against remaking the Brandon Lee film than I am. But this was an opportunity with the director that I met to go back and make a faithful adaptation of the book. Because as much as the Brandon Lee film looks like the book and feels like the book, it's not the book exactly. It's maybe 40% of the book. So this was a chance to go back and do a really faithful, like page one, starting from page one adaptation. So,
Are they talking like really dark, or are they gonna make
yeah,
it for a family?
no, it's very, very dark. Super violent, and one of it, I mean, as much as I love that first film, it's like the violence is very stylized and, kind of like this John Woo element to it. And I wanted it to be ugly. I wanted it to be like Taxi Driver, where you wanted to look away from the violence. It was so ugly. I mean, 35 years in Detroit, I saw some pretty horrific things. So, and if you look in the book, the violence is never glamorized. It's as ugly as can be, as possible, So this was a chance to go back and have a much truer vision of it, the director and I, he's a British guy. He came over to meet me, and within a day, we were like finishing each other's sentences. So and it's like a partnership. He's agreed he won't make it without me, and I won't be involved unless he's doing it.
That's glorious. I like
And the studio is like, finally, they're like, you know, they're just like, well, what do you need to make this happen, you know? And so we gave them a list, and you know, I mean, Relativity Studios has every kind of problem you can possibly imagine. You know, they've made 44 films, and every single one of them has lost money, right up to Angry Birds, the fucking movie. I'm like, I don't know who thought that was a good idea. You know, you ever said it in a movie and you're just, within like 15 minutes, you're going, who thought this was a good idea?
Oh, yeah, many. But to be fair, at this point, with everything that pretty much touches film with some type of superhero aspect as a property, takes off. So if there's any time to strike, it's now.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you have a tentative date?
They're supposed to start filming in January, but I'll believe that. I've been hearing that for 5 years now, so.
Mm-hmm.
But I think with Jason Momoa coming on board,
It's such an awesome pick.
that it might finally get the push.
Yeah, I think so.
That it needs.
Absolutely.
And he's a real sweetheart. I mean, he says it's like his dream role. He asked for time off between Justice League and
Oh, wow.
Aquaman to make it. He said he would lose weight and slim down. He said whatever it takes to get the role. And because actually he's been after it for like 2 years, and me and
Oh,
the
so he
director
wants it.
kept
He
telling
wants
him, "No, you're just too big. You're just too big," you know. And he spent like 20 grand of his own money making his own audition reel. And he looked really good in it, but again, he's like big as a fucking refrigerator, you know.
Yeah.
But he went to England and met the director, and said he would do whatever it takes, you know. And
Has the director been to Detroit? Has it been to that side of town?
no.
No, I'm just saying. I remember. I know it was a big influence.
But yeah, he did research on it. I don't think he's actually been there. I mean, I'll definitely take him there because we planned on shooting some exteriors there.
Yeah, I think it's psychologically imprinting at this point.
Yeah.
People think just driving
He
around.
did- Yeah, he did a lot of like photo research on Detroit, and then he found a place in Ireland that looks a lot like Detroit from the 80s with the abandoned factories and he, you know, and I said, Ireland, it's, you know, but he sent me pictures and it does look a lot like Detroit. And it's the same kind of factories, the same kind of streets. You know, and there's the added incentive of they get tax breaks for shooting overseas too in Europe, where the state will kick in $20 million just to bring the jobs there. So you know, so it adds to the budget of the film.
I wanted to ask you about. I want to see how you're reflecting on being a part of. I want to go back to Brandon Lee. Like, how are you reflecting on being a part of like Bruce Lee's story and Brandon's life, and vice versa, because they're a part of your story and you're a part of theirs. So what are your thoughts on that?
I had a real hard time with all of that. You know, I mean, you know, it's like I met Brandon, and he was the sweetest, most humble person. You know, I just kept thinking, you know, this is Bruce Lee's son. You could go anywhere in the world and show someone a picture of Superman, Marilyn Monroe, and Bruce Lee, and they're gonna know who it is. Anywhere in the world, you can go into the Congo, and they'll know who that is. You know, and but he was just so humble and. You know, and so I got to kind of approach Bruce Lee from his standpoint, you know, about what he remembered, and he would show me stuff that his dad had left him, and but you know, it's just kind of like after Brandon was killed, after he died, I don't know, I had a lot of like residual guilt over it, like somehow I was responsible. You know, even though that's like dog logic, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, I wasn't even there when it happened, so it was, you know. But I still kind of felt like, well, this is his moment to shine, you know, and kind of like I'm getting all the glory from it, you know. I'm getting wealthy from it, and you know, it's like, you know, Entertainment Tonight's fucking parked outside my apartment, you know. It's just like, you know, it didn't seem right to me. And then for like the next 2 years, because they had Hamlet without Hamlet. They needed somebody to promote the film wherever it opened in the U.S. and then eventually Europe, South America. So I went, because I wanted people to see this for the right reason, because Brandon was proud of it, not for like this morbid reason of this is the film he died in. So I agreed to promote it wherever it opened, and it was really hard, going and talking to press, and then I'd have to sit through the movie again to answer questions afterwards, and I did that for 2 years, I mean, it was also a good kind of like healing thing as well, because I got, the same journalist that interviewed me had interviewed Brandon a couple years before for Rapid Fire, and that opened. So we got to kind of share stories, and so it was kind of like a beginning of a healing process. And it's cool. I'm friends with his sister now as well. I mean, I had met her before, but I always kind of like stayed away from her. Like, is she gonna like hold me responsible, or because there's that whole kind of like this project is cursed, kind of thing, and the reality is that kind of not the actor getting killed, but those kind of accidents happen on every set. You just don't hear about them. I mean, 11 people were killed making the Dukes of Hazzard TV show. You don't hear about that, 6 of them at one time when a truck rolled over with a camera crew on it. So, but we've just recently, become Facebook friends, and so yeah, she,
So you do like technology.
I like cat memes.
I mean, I think, to pretty much close it out, I think that was a great question, Dante. I think Brandon Lee kind of harkens back to me with the Heath Ledger thing with The Dark Knight, which is a sad story, not in the same vein, but posthumously, they're both remembered for their
Right.
roles stronger than anything that they ever did when they were alive. And for you to say that how cathartic it was to go through, I mean, obviously, as a creator, what happens with the property and out of your control is not your fault, but I understand it probably gives you that thing of, if I never created this,
Right.
it would have
Right.
led to X event. But just look at everything it's done. There's probably people in this room and out of this room that has been very influenced by The Crow and Brandon Lee's performance, and maybe it's touched them in their life, so you're part of that story.
Yeah. There's not a single show that goes by where someone doesn't, thank me or say, at one end it's like, they thank me for helping them through a hard time, and and on the other end there's people that say, well, that book or that movie saved my life, and I mean, I don't know about that, but I think it's just good to know that you're not alone, that someone else has felt the same things you have.
And I can't believe we've gone this far into the panel without saying it. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
All right.
I guess we're done.
I thank you for your time.
Sure.
It was fantastic.
Thank you.
Is that painless?
Tattoos?
No.
I want to say
No, the